Welcome to the Commentary Magazine Daily Podcast. Today is Monday, December 2nd. I am Commentary's executive editor, Abe Greenwald. John is not feeling in full voice today. He's got whatever's going around, so we are going to do our best to soldier on without him today. And by we, I mean, of course, Commentary's Washington columnist and director of domestic policy at the American Enterprise Institute, Matthew Continetti. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Abe.
And Commentary's media columnist and senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, Christine Rosen. Hi, Christine.
Hi, Abe.
And Commentary's own senior editor, Seth Mandel. Hi, Seth.
Hi, Abe. This is an insurrection.
No.
People are going to wake up to hear Abe's voice doing the intro.
Though I do feel like we're kind of the dogs who caught the car here today.
Yeah.
It's no John.
Everybody
do?
Prepare for a 3-hour.
Right. Or a 15-minute podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Right.
So I say we lead off with Hunter Biden. Joe Biden has granted his son a very broad pardon after having said multiple times that he would not. Is anyone surprised? What do we think of the ramifications? Is anyone shocked, outraged? Jump in.
Well, I wouldn't say I was surprised at the pardon. I did think that Biden would wait till the sentencing and then commute Hunter's sentence, and that would make it easy for him to align his repeated assertions that he was not going to interfere with this case and he was not going to issue a pardon with his actual, deed for his son to get his son out of any prison time. Instead, he went for the full pardon, which, while not surprising, is pretty brazen, considering all of the times that the White House has said that he wasn't going to issue such a pardon. And then the second thing that's striking about it, Abe, is exactly what you pointed out, which is its breadth. And the fact that it pardons Hunter from all crimes he committed or may have committed between 2014 and yesterday is a pretty broad assertion of the president's pardon power. Some legal scholars who've been quoted in the media this morning say that the only pardon that matches this in breadth is Gerald Ford's pardon for Richard Nixon in September of 1974. So,
And once again, our national nightmare is over.
Yeah. Well, in a way, it could be just be beginning, because what this does is it creates a lot of questions about the Biden presidency. Of course, Biden issues this pardon and his statement, which we can talk about too, and then immediately gets on a plane for Angola. So he's not answering any questions about this pardon and about why he reversed himself. And apparently there may be a press opportunity with Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, who has said that Biden wouldn't issue the pardon even more times than Biden has. So we might be able to get that. The second thing that happens, though, is it does raise a lot of questions, specifically this breadth. And there is some speculation that takes place on the political playbook this morning that this may have been not just a preemptive pardon in light of the upcoming sentencing for Hunter's trial, but a preemptive pardon in light of the Trump presidency. Because you can see among certain figures, not just political figures, people like Joe and Mika of Morning Joe, a kind of trepidation and nervousness that Trump may come after them. And this is why Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski kind of telegraphed their visit to Mar-a-Lago after the election. And here, too, the sense that if the Trump Justice Department would reopen the Biden cases and perhaps dig in a little bit deeper into the Biden business relationships, they may uncover, in fact, they're probably likely to uncover serious crimes. But now Hunter cannot be charged with any such crimes that took place during that period. And so one final point, the pardon that I'm looking for now is of Biden's brother, who was Hunter's business partner in a lot of these deals. That has not been issued. But if that comes out at the last minute, remember, a lot of these pardons always come out in the last hours of a presidency, then you can, I think, be sure that this was a preemptive move to stop any Justice Department investigation into the Biden business dealings.
Well, and that's what was so interesting to me about the reaction to this pardon. No one, I think, on the right side of the aisle was surprised that he did this. We've been saying over and over again, of course, he's going to pardon his son. We should talk. I want to say a few things about the tone of Biden's statement, but to the issue of pardoning relatives, I've heard a lot. I had a couple of friends say, "Oh, yes, well, Trump pardoned, Charles Kushner, and now he's making him ambassador. And, Bill Clinton pardoned his half brother for an old cocaine charge." In both of those cases, those men had served part of their sentence. They had actually done prison time. And it's usually the case that a presidential pardon is given after sentencing and after, in many cases, the serving of part of that sentence. So in this case, the preemptive nature of it really is novel compared to other presidential pardons of relatives, in-laws, etc. But Joe Biden's statement really bothered me because he rolled out the playbook that he has been using for Hunter Biden, the empathy playbook, and tried to play that song one more time. And I found it egregious overreach in this sense. I believe he truly does care deeply about his son. It has clearly taken a toll on him personally for years. But the idea that it was his addiction to blame and, oh, he's gotten better, the tax fraud happened after Hunter Biden became sober, supposedly. So the federal tax crimes for which any one of us would also be charged and sent to prison, because if we are writing off prostitutes and our children's law school tuition as deductions, we too will be investigated by the IRS and likely serve time. The fact that he again is trying to say, look, we all understand my son has this addiction issue. Americans will forgive me for forgiving him. I found that a little bit too much in this tone. And the tone of his pardon was very much, we are all aggrieved victims of our own justice system. This is a two-tier justice system. He was unfairly prosecuted. And that also falls flat, given the Biden administration's own weaponization of the justice system during the last 4 years.
Yeah,
well, that's what they're going to jump on, right? I mean, that's what Trump people are saying. Like, we agree.
Well, not just, but not just Trump people. A lot of the sort of mainstream media reaction has been upset about this because it seems to put meat on the bones of Trump's claims about a two-tiered unfair justice system. So they're sort of like, in a tizzy. It's funny. For my part,
he just
no, I'm sorry. What was that?
He just announced he was nominating Kash Patel to the FBI, and we had that whole debate about that. Opened the debate about how much politicization has been going on at the federal level and Justice Department, and what needs to be done about it, and whether it's too much. People responded by saying, "Well, I guess I agree that if from Trump's perspective, I would want somebody who would, kind of want a clean house, maybe, but I don't know about this guy, whatever." But this came right on the heels of that, really part of the extended discussion. So now we have a kind of bipartisan presidential complaining about politics at the Justice Department in a way we haven't had in a very long time.
I had thought, for my part, that a lot of the talk about Trump's wanting revenge has been overblown and campaign scare talk. He didn't lock Hillary up after he said he was going to lock her up. You saw the comity between Trump and Biden sitting together after the election, congratulating Trump, accepting Biden's congratulations and so on. And it seemed to be very much like, oh, that was all for the campaign, But I think Matt has kind of convinced me that maybe this administration, the incoming Trump administration, would in fact go after dirty Biden dealings in the way that they fear.
You never know. I do want to say something about the tone of the statement that Christine pointed out. Two things. The first is, there are a lot of fathers in the world. There's only one president. And so, yes, I get it. any father is going to want to help his son and to do what he can for his son. But the power of the presidency is such that, there have only been now 46 people, 45 who have had it, right? And they're granted extraordinary means to achieve their objectives. And so it would have been, I think, more telling if Biden had not done this. If he had just said, okay, he'll be sentenced, but I'm going to commute his sentence on the way out. Instead, this full pardon for anything, who knows what else is there for a decade, is pretty extraordinary and pretty brazen, as I say. The second thing is the weaponization piece. I have to say, if there were an Academy Award for gaslighting, the Biden administration would be cleaning up. I mean, they'd be coming home with the trophies for 4 years in a row. They'd have them piled in their closets. It's not just that this administration is saying that the DOJ is weaponized when they, of course, launched these political campaigns against Trump through the lawfare. And now we know that they're political because Jack Smith, the special prosecutor, is just closing down shop. I mean, all over now, right? It's that the double standard of justice was working in Hunter's favor until the whistleblowers came out and blew up that plea agreement.
By the way,
this was what they wanted all along.
That's what I wanted to just know. You reminded me the broadness of the pardon echoes the insane broadness of the plea agreement. Remember that plea deal was like, exempted Hunter from all future wrongdoings. He couldn't be punished from. Right. So
the pardon begins 3 months before he went to work for Burisma.
Well, and the gaslighting point here is very important. And for the Democrats who listen to us and are kind of stalwart partisans of the Democratic Party, please hear my voice. Matt's point is important because if they don't learn a lesson here, they are doomed to repeat some of the mistakes that got Trump reelected this time. And that's this. Joe Biden once again broke a promise, lied to the country, has proven himself not to be a cuddly old guy who has everyone's best interest in heart, but a dirty and backroom dealing politician who will lie to cover up his corrupt family and is happy to profit off his access to power and allow his family members to profit off the access to power. And if their only concern about the pardon isn't, wow, he lied to us and seems corrupt, but this will allow Trump to do even worse, they will not learn the lesson of how voters who swung from Biden to Trump, why they did that, what disgusted them about the system. And if Trump overreaches, they'll swing back to whomever runs before. But this is an important lesson. He lied to you. He lied to his own voters, and he did it in such a blatant way and then made an Angola exit, which is what I'm going to call any politician who runs away from a problem he creates from here on out. There has to be some accountability on the part of Democrats who really wanted to think the best of Joe Biden.
One of
the reasons he made an Angola exit, by the way, is that we have no extradition treaty with Angola. Just letting you know.
He lied about his age, right? I mean, it's just piles and piles of lies, and then finally ending with this one is it's really quite striking. So even when we say we're not surprised, you're still kind of like in awe of the of the gumption. And we also should mention, Biden. Did Biden write the pardon? I'm just going to go there. I'm just going to say there. Or did Hunter sit next to him and kind of say, now, Dad, just sign this paper? Because that's my working theory for why Biden walked out of that bookstore in Nantucket holding Rashid Khalidi, the terrorist sympathizer's History of Palestine. I think that one of his Zoomer grandchildren who hate Israel and have been behind his progressive move over the last 4 years kind of just, shoved the book in Biden's the notch of his his hand and his arm because his hand's in his pocket. Here, Granddad, just take this book. And then 24 hours later, it's, hey, Pops, why don't you sign this piece of paper? Well, sure, son. Next thing you know, we have this huge national scandal. I mean, the man is not in a good state. There was a Politico story this weekend about how, typically when a president is on his way out. Now, Biden's on his way out a lot sooner than he expected. But when a president is on his way out, they set up times where the staff of the White House and the executive office of the president can come and have their picture taken with the president. It was kind of a big deal. Like I say, there's only one president at a time, and in the 200 plus years of this republic, there have only been 45 of them. And here we go. Biden hasn't done it. They don't want to expose the staffers to Biden because they're afraid of what he might do and what they might come away with saying. And he's still the president for a little bit over a month now. That's scary.
It also raises like the Kamala Harris video, right? One of the responses to that was, what are her staffers trying to do to her? You know, videoing
the video last week
yeah. To return to that, just there was this. The immediate response was, this looks like sabotage. Like, how can you work for this woman and say, all right, here you go, this is good, that's a great take, let's print it. And then, you know, Matt mentions Biden with the book, and so it feels like one of those, you know, Abe, it's even worse than that situations where it's like the staffers aren't just being kept away from them or not having their usual transition period, but their staffers are like, there's some kind of meanness.
They're decorating him with things that will get him in trouble.
Yeah, like they're putting this as yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's got like a Christmas tree.
Coming out with tinsel.
Yeah,
right.
Like a Christmas tree.
Yeah, I mean because that's why a president holds a book when people are around, so he can so there is some connection drawn between the two. Right. Yeah,
there is. Obama did that constantly, and it was like, you know, that's how you get a summer bestsellers. Obama would walk out, you know, in wherever his summer house was with a book, and that's the book that would sell.
Yeah,
and for Trump it was he would say this is a terrible book and a terrible person, and that's how that book would sell.
To Matt's point here about the lies, and to Christine's point. It's like this ever darkening cloud under which this administration is exiting. I mean, if you just go back to the campaign, the debate where his performance, you have this one huge fiction exposed, right? That Biden is capable of being in sufficient cognitive shape to run the country into debate. And that's exposed along with the media's covering it up and the administration. And then you have the entire Harris campaign, which itself was this huge fiction, you know, this empty confection of joy that suddenly, the moment she lost, it seemed like everyone could sort of acknowledge the fact in plain sight, which is that there was no there. There was something quite worse than a there. And now you have this blatant lie. This you know, what has become a blatant lie in retrospect. Biden's assertion multiple times that he was not going to pardon his son. There's something sort of profoundly ignoble happening here in Biden's exit. It's the whole presidency has taken a downturn here, and we may not have seen the end of it.
No, we still have time to go. This might be a good way to transition to the other big story of the weekend. There were plenty of them, and by that I mean Donald Trump's nomination of Kash Patel to be the director of the FBI. 24 hours before this pardon was issued, all Washington wanted to talk about was Trump's personnel moves over Thanksgiving weekend, mainly Kash Patel as FBI director. And we can talk about the merits of the nomination separately, but I do think the bridge here is the second that Biden issued this pardon, people stopped talking about Patel. and in fact, the Patel nomination makes a certain kind of sense now in light of the pardon. Because if you're on both levels, one, if you're like me and you just look at this administration and say, gosh, how kind of corrupt has it been? I'm not just the business deals, but the way in which they have bent the truth in order to hide the reality of Biden and his family, you would think, oh, well, an institution like the FBI does need somebody in order to come in and say, okay, here's what's what. Let's figure out actually what's been going on. And on the other hand, if you accept Biden's premise that the Justice Department has been corrupt and weaponized, well, then you would want also someone who's a reformer to come in and to knock heads around and to make sure that the people at the FBI headquarters are actually pursuing crimes and not political opponents. So it's, in a way, Biden did Trump an additional favor, not just in kind of reminding the public why people are so upset at Joe Biden, why his presidency is unpopular and deemed a failure, but also giving an explanation for why someone like Kash Patel might be necessary at FBI.
Yeah, there's
and I think also looking back over it, you have the situation where Biden was supposed to be the norms guy, the return to norms guy. And I don't say that, as a gotcha. What I mean is when the Dems ran Hillary Clinton in 2016, they ran somebody who voters understood was basically as corrupt as they felt Donald Trump was. And they looked at the two of them and they said, well, Trump is honest about it, right? He's the honest liar, or whatever Dave Chappelle christened him. And, and he said, I'll tell you why. I can tell you it's corrupt because she was at my wedding, right? He looked over at the debate and said Hillary Clinton was at my wedding because I paid her to be there, whatever it is. His point was, I bought all these people off. I know it's corrupt. I'm part of the system. And then they ran Biden. That was supposed to be the different one. Hillary was such a disaster because people took one look at classic Clintonian politics and said, are you kidding me? This is supposed to be the non-corrupt alternative to this guy that you're telling me is going to blow up the whole system. And looking back, I mean, obviously there are plenty of people who said Biden was never the norms guy, but I understand that. But the narrative on the whole was we got it, we fixed it, we got it right this time. We acknowledge that we did a stupid thing by nominating an obviously corrupt person, or a person who the public believed was deeply corrupt and part of this system in 2016 against Trump. We're not going to do that this time. This time, we've got Joe from Scranton. And now when you look back, you see, first of all, people are right to question, do they have anybody who's not like this, right? Like that's the bet. Like what's the bench situation for the Democrats? Is the country looking at the party and saying, well, the good alternative to Hillary was this pardoning of his son and maybe brother and all the other stuff. And so I think that it casts the shadow, Abe, when you talk about, the sort of cloud they're leaving under, it casts a shadow back, the whole way.
Well, when you say the whole way, but I want to we can get into Kash Patel, but I just want to add to Seth's point here. If you look at what the Biden administration is bookended by, right, started with burying the Hunter laptop and everything that was involved in that, involving the national security figures, and now it closes on this note of this broad pardon of Hunter,
story.
And in the middle you have 4 years of the media and the Democrats saying this is all nonsense, nothing's going on here.
Go back farther with the first impeachment, right? Trump was threatening to withhold the money to Ukraine because he wanted Zelensky to open up the investigation to Hunter. Somehow, this has been Hunter's story we've been living through. I don't know how we got here, but I'd say, just Seth, quickly, I think you're right about Biden being the alternative. But remember, it's not so much the alternative to Hillary in 2020. It's the alternative to Bernie. The real thing that the Democrats fear is Bernie. They fear him for a lot of reasons. One is revolutionary aspect. Two, they think that he's a loser, and they're probably right. And so it's keeping Bernie away is what elevated Biden, who turned out to be completely not up to the job.
But I have to say, I was a Kash Patel skeptic going in. When he was nominated, I would sort of rolled my eyes and thought, oh, it's going to be another Matt Gaetz situation, perhaps. But this pardon has radicalized me because I feel like maybe we do need someone who wasn't a former agent, who did, look, he worked for Nunes. He delved deeply into the Russia conspiracy hoax. He does know how to investigate things. He doesn't have criminal prosecution background. That concerns me because that is, as Matt said earlier, the FBI's job is to go after crime. But in some sense, if you believe, as I think a lot of voters, and not just MAGA voters, believe that our justice system is two-tier, it is unfair, it has become weaponized by political self-interest on both sides sometimes, but lately from the Democratic side against the Republican side, then an outside rebel might be what you need for a transition back to what Department of Justice is supposed to be about. And look, he said, he went on Steve Bannon's podcast a year ago and said, I'm going to, from day one, I'm going to shut down the Hoover building in DC and it's going to become a museum to the deep state. First of all, I would love someone to just destroy that horrible, ugly, brutalist building that is a mockery of architecture in our nation's capital. But perhaps there is a there. I mean, he does need to be vetted. He does need to be subjected to all the scrutiny for such a powerful position. And he will probably be recess appointed because Wright's term still goes for what? 3 more years, 2 more years?
Well, it goes. So Chris Wray, of course, is Trump's own appointee to the FBI. Trump appointed Christopher Wray as head of the FBI after he fired James Comey in his first year of the presidency last time. And Wray was known to be a Republican. He was known to be a conservative, but for various reasons. And the truth is, I mean, I know that there's kind of, MAGA reasons that they don't like Wray's leadership at the FBI. But whether that's enough to explain Trump's animus toward him, I'm not quite sure. There may have been some personal interactions that Trump just didn't like him dealing with him or not. But Wray has become an object of MAGA derision. But he's still in the job, as you say. And the FBI directors are appointed to 10-year terms after J. Edgar Hoover's departure and death in order to make that position somewhat insulated from the political winds. It clearly hasn't worked because we've had cases of FBI directors who are extremely political and also not quite up to the job, most notably Comey. So Trump now, I think that Trump has a decision to make, but really the decision is Christopher Wray's. But right now, Christopher Wray says that he is focused on running the FBI, large federal agency, involved in many different investigations, criminal, counterterrorism. But does he decide to wait this out and tempt Trump to fire him? Or does he decide, you know what, I'm going to announce my resignation pending confirmation of my, that would be something to do too. If I resign pending confirmation of my replacement, well, as Christine suggests, Patel may not actually be confirmed. Remember, in all these appointments, if 4 Republicans say no, they're not going to get Senate confirmation. So the next big decision here is Wray's. And then, of course, the question is, can Patel go through the vetting process and still retain enough support among the Republican senators? I'll say this, with one difference, I think, between Patel and Gates right away is the personal side of the Gates ledger, let's say, was out in the open from day one. People knew.
Very diplomatic, Matt.
People knew what was going on, and whether it was the fact that the FBI had investigated and decided not to press charges, but the other stories that had been coming out about Matt Gates's personal life for many years, they were circulating around Washington, and Gates had made many personal enemies, especially in the House and then later House members who moved up to the Senate. So I think right away that nomination was greeted with kind of a raised eyebrow in many quarters in Washington. And it was relatively quickly that Trump called on Gates and said, hey, the votes just aren't there. Well, with Patel, the objections to Patel aren't personal, right? I mean, we'll see what the media dredges up if they can or anything. But in fact, what they seem to be more based on his his agenda and his affect.
Yeah.
And I think that if he can use his affect in such a way that it charms some senators, and he makes promises to people like Chuck Grassley, who's going to be the head of the Judiciary Committee and responsible for was it judiciary or is it oversight that he's responsible for? Oh, sorry. Anyway, Grassley's going to be kind of responsible for this nomination. Finance, narcotic, judiciary. Maybe it will be enough. The agenda, I don't think, will be the stopping block for these nominees. It will be other aspects of their biography and character that could sink them.
I feel like this raises a broader issue with Trump, some of his appointees, and generally the agenda here, which is to fix corrupt and broken institutions. Can Trump find someone to do the job whose affect isn't that of a fire breather, Another type of outsider reformer, other than the ones that you look at and go, this guy seems a little reckless. He's going a little overboard here, and that's so that is why I also shared Christine's initial suspicion about Patel, but I don't know. I mean, it's in Trump world, we know they're hard to find.
Well, and also I think he wants people to feel fear. He wants to send a message. I think that he nominates people who immediately make the headlines as wrecking balls, in part intentionally, because he wants to signal to the FBI, I'm bringing in a wrecking ball. And I think mainly Kash Patel it's his loyalty to Trump that's the main thing for Trump, because I think Trump just wants to make sure that there's no, I don't know, skunk works or whatever you want to call it going on under the surface in an agency that, is supposed to answer to him. But also that, one of the things that helps Kash is that he is an expression of what everybody thinks Trump wants to do. And we litigated that in the election. And that's why he actually has a leg up on the confirmation. Trump ran and, everybody's afraid of what Trump is going to do. Kash is like an instrument of what they're afraid Trump wants to do. It's much harder to vote down somebody who is, a blunt instrument of the guy nominating him, rather than, as we said, something comes out that shows he's not qualified.
But not all the voters who went for Trump in this election are those voters. And by that, I mean, a lot of them are, and I'll put myself in, I didn't want either of them to win, quite frankly, just like the last several elections. But there's a Bhattacharya version of this too, right? Go into the NIH with respect for what this institution should do, fix it, be a rebel, but be a rebel with credentials, with allies, powerful allies, people who actually also know how the institution should run. Now, I don't know if that's possible with the FBI, quite frankly, at this point. It might not be. And you might need some of these Patel folks to come in and knock skulls. But there is a version of reformer / slightly radical reformer that Trump doesn't tend to attract. He's chosen a few of them, and that actually bodes well. But whether they can actually tackle these huge bureaucracies will be a question. No one should want that job. I mean, it's a really tough thing to reform a bureaucracy of these sizes. So,
but I also think that was by accident. So the Bhattacharya thing is, I think, a happy accident. I think that what Trump sees is a guy who was blacklisted and cast out by his peers. And, we had all those emails with Fauci and the others writing about Jay Bhattacharya and what he was saying and what he was doing and how to sort of sideline him from the conversation. I think Trump sees the exclusion, the outcast, and not necessarily the mild-mannered respect for the institution below the surface. I think he likes the fact that who are the guys that they tried to cast out last time, and who turned out to be more right than they were on some of this stuff.
But I want the
and
guys
Jay
who took a
fits that.
professional risk to tell the truth, and he was one of those guys with the Great Barrington Declaration. Like he took a genuine risk to his own professional reputation to say the truth, and was called a liar, and whose reputation was smeared. Turned out to be right. Trump needs more of those types of civil servants. I would argue.
In Patel's defense, that's how MAGA views him, Christine, right?
Yes,
because he was
true.
the main author of the
Right.
Nunes memo, which got into the whole FISA warrants, into the Trump campaign. And, he has been someone who has really stood out there in defense of Trump, but not just kind of whatever Trump says goes, also kind of unearthing various schemes in these institutions to weaken Donald Trump. So he's a MAGA hero. I think after the Gates defeat, the America First movement was a little bit, oh gosh, are we not going to have our people in there other than Trump, of course? But now they have someone here in Patel who will be their representative. And the question is, how does this next month or so play out? I mean, the one disadvantage, it strikes me, with these early appointments, just the incredible job Trump has done, and with all these appointments, we get to one other appointment, maybe that will be a segue into the Middle East here in a moment, but they are kind of dangling there in a hook for a while, right? And so, with Gates, like I say, everybody kind of knew everything, and so Washington was like, no, I don't think we're going to do that. But you look at what's happening to Pete Hegseth. He's out there, and once the bad media, the drive-by media is coming at him. And whether it's the New York Times obtaining that email that his mother sent him during an ugly divorce, talking about his treatment of the women in his life, to now a Jane Mayer special in the New Yorker filled with damaging material. Who knows whether it's supported by facts, considering the author of the report. But that's going to build up, and it's going to cause trouble. We'll see whether something like that happens with Patel. But right now, I would say the nominees who are under the harshest light are Hegseth and RFK Jr. Those are the ones. And if those become the main event, then I think someone like Patel has a way to get confirmed. But why don't I talk about another of the appointments I think that made a lot of people scratch their heads over the weekend? That was Trump's appointment of his, I guess, what is it? It's
his daughter's father-in-law.
Daughter's father-in-law. But I guess,
By the way,
is there a word
two of his
describe-
daughter's father-in-laws.
Yeah.
Yes,
Both father-in-laws got the nod.
But what are they to the father?
Yeah, there's no. I looked it up.
just-
Not quite Machatanim.
It just occurred to me. Yeah, I
Not
don't
quite
know.
the
It's,
Machatan.
they're a relation, I guess. But right. So in the case of Ivanka,
They are, by the way, can I just interrupt? They are what Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy are apparently going to be, as
oh really?
his son
that's right,
will be
yes.
marrying Martin Lawrence's daughter. That's an aside.
Well,
Go
when
ahead.
Eddie
Sorry.
Murphy is president and Martin Lawrence is appointed to ambassador of France,
Ambassador.
there will be historical precedent for that. So in Ivanka's father-in-law, Charles Kushner, who Trump pardoned at the end of his first term, will be the ambassador designate to France. And then yesterday, I believe, Trump announced that Tiffany Trump's father-in-law,
Bulos.
yes, whose name is Mossad Bulos, will be a special envoy to the Middle East. And this is interesting. He's a very rich Lebanese businessman, Mossad Bulos. He has many connections and seemed to have played some role in Trump's outreach to Arab American voters in Michigan. As we've been saying on the podcast, mainly that outreach was to Lebanese Americans living in Michigan. But this is an interesting position. And I think it speaks to Trump's interest in maintaining the ceasefire deal that Lebanon / Hezbollah struck with Israel last week. And so, Seth, you were on vacation last week, and we didn't get your take on the ceasefire. There's some, civil disagreement, mild disagreement between me and John on the ceasefire, just mild, but interested in your thoughts on the ceasefire and what you think the appointment of Mossad Bulos might mean.
Yeah, I think that loyalty, I mean, for Bulos, I think it's, again, loyalty. He helped him with the Arab American vote. But in terms of the ceasefire, I think, Lebanon is not, it's in pieces, right? And so Biden made a point, and Macron, the French president Emmanuel Macron, they made a point of saying that this is a cessation of hostilities between Lebanon and Israel. And they repeated that in the statement. In fact, they repeated it twice in one sentence at one point. They just kept saying Lebanon and Israel. So the whole thing feels like a way to kind of gloss over who we're really talking about here, which is Iran. This is a ceasefire agreement between Iran and Israel, if it's an agreement between anybody. And so, putting, as I mentioned in a post, if this were in a ceasefire between Lebanon and Israel, you would not be putting the Lebanese army in the buffer zone. Right. So the whole thing feels a bit ridiculous. It feels like an attempt to just kind of cover over what we're really talking about here, which is one of my ongoing complaints, one of our general ongoing complaints about this administration, which is ignoring the Iranian elephant in the room. As far as Bulos is concerned, he ran for Lebanese parliament. So here's the thing. In 2018, he ran for Lebanese parliament. He ran, I believe, on a ticket that was allied to some extent with Hezbollah's own parliamentary group, right? Hezbollah has a veto, essentially a working veto in Lebanese politics, not because they have a majority, but because they have enough friends and can make enough trouble in Lebanon's parliament. And so generally Hezbollah runs for seats. It often doesn't get, into the double digits, even in seats, but it's really about Hezbollah sort of mapping out its alliance within Lebanon's parliament. And the question is how much of that applies to Bulos. He ran to be part of that, essentially that group, and everybody knows the game. You don't run for parliament in Lebanon without knowing who exactly you are aligned with or intending to pledge alignment with. And so I think that's one of the questions that they're going to have to deal with is, he's obviously a mover and a shaker and a deal maker in the Middle East, and Trump likes that. But he might also have some things that come out that make people a bit nervous. He's not subject to Senate confirmation, so we're not talking about him getting voted down. But a lot of people are scratching their heads because if you would take the father-in-law part out of it, he would be very low on a list of people you would expect this Trump administration, which has been focused on maximum pressure on Iran, to pick for a role like this. And you wonder what he's thinking, if he knows that, if he knows, the extent of what people are actually concerned about in terms of the politics.
But, it also could be that Trump just wants to thank him for helping him with votes and that he has absolutely anything policy-wise going forward.
Right.
I think
we should also be happy for Tiffany, by the way. I'm torn because I'm happy for Tiffany.
Shout out to Tiffany, who is
getting recognized.
Forgotten Trump daughter who has long sought her father's approval, and poor Tiffany, poor forgotten Tiffany. Can I also add that there's something weird about during Trump's first term when Ivanka got a job in the administration, and Kushner her husband did as well, and there was a lot of talk about nepotism, and I personally was not comfortable with him putting his family members on the payroll, as she in particular didn't have any qualifications for the role that she was being paid to do. But there is a sense in which that's another way the Biden administration has also undercut any argument against that. I mean, the it's a family thing. They've turned the White House into, not in a charming way either, just we're using the public's house for our family things. You know, he had a granddaughter get married there. Hunter was living there. There's a way in which it's no longer charming when the president's family sort of invades. This started under Clinton. I think there was a lot of concern in the mainstream media about the role that his family members, particularly
Carter,
his wayward
even
family
Carter
members,
too.
Yes,
Jimmy
yes,
Carter's
Carter
family.
too. Yeah. So, but that story, the president's family story, and how the People's House, you know, the White House, is used as an extended family spot is so fascinating to me. And I wonder in Trump's second term if we're going to suddenly see the return of all the concerns about family members on the payroll, family members being given important jobs, et cetera, et cetera.
I mean, this is another Hunter, you know, residual here. It's hard just after seeing the kind of money that the Bidens raked in by virtue of Joe being vice president and president. It would be hard to blow up Trump family appointments to the level of scandal now, I think. And it also falls short of predicted dangers of a Trump administration were, right? Which is not, that just that his family's going to be around. It's that, you know, he's going to affect some, you know, takeover and ruination of our democracy. I think we should use, though, the Bulos point to talk a little bit more about what's going on in the Middle East. The ceasefire seems to be fragilely holding. I mean, it's like being tested every now and then, but in the main seems to be sticking. And now there are some very big sort of shockwaves in the region happening as a result of the ongoing seven front war that Israel faces. Namely, I'm talking about this reignited civil war in Syria, where you have these Islamist factions now on the move. Elsewhere, Matt, you had some thoughts on this earlier, and I want to hear from all of you.
No, I mean, I do think what's happening right now is a consequence of Iran's weakness. I think that's true with the ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. I do think Hezbollah got beat up pretty badly. And Iran got beat up pretty badly when Israel sent the IAF in October to take out a lot of different sites and the entire Iranian air defense network. And so what's happened? Well, Hezbollah agreed to this, again, ceasefire, which is very tenuous, but it's significant in two respects. One is it has separated the northern sector from Gaza. And so now that Hezbollah is no longer in the fight with Hamas against Israel, this isolates Hamas. And so that has now created an opportunity for another round of negotiations between the United States, Qatar, Hamas, and Israel over hostages. There was this heartbreaking video of one of the American hostages, Adon Alexander, which came out over the weekend. And I think just reignited all of our desire to see the hostages released by Hamas. But that will, I think, may be, there may be more of a chance of some type of agreement than in previous times, because whoever leads Hamas now, and as I've been saying on the podcast, it's unclear who does, but whoever leads Hamas now is telegraphing that maybe they're more flexible in some of the arrangements that they might concede. Now, we have to wait and see, and of course, we're very skeptical. That's in Gaza. But in Syria, Iran's weakness has led to this new move by the Syrian rebels. These rebels are from the north. They are backed by Turkey. They have ties to Turkey. They're Islamist. Some of them have connections to the Al-Qaeda elements, the ISIS elements that have been, roaming Syria and Iraq, the wastelands there, for decade now. And they had an extraordinary feat of arms in seizing Aleppo, one of Syria's largest cities, and moving south and gaining ground. And I think that what that shows is the equilibrium that had been established in the Syrian civil war between the Kurds, who America supports, not as fulsomely as we should, in my view, but nonetheless, we support the Kurds Then this more Islamist faction, Sunni faction in around Aleppo, and then of course the Assad regime, which is a minority Alawite sect of Shia Muslim, but then also serves as kind of the self-appointed guardian of the different minority religions within Syria, including many Christians in the south. That equilibrium that had been established for many years after the initial outbreak of the Syrian civil war, which was in 2011, let's not forget, it was a long time ago, that equilibrium is now upset. And that's what happens when Iran is dealt a blow. And so we're now seeing the emergence of perhaps of a new picture in the Middle East with a weakened Iran, and an Iran that needs to be even further weakened by the incoming Trump administration.
I just want to also add that this is also a result of Russia being preoccupied with its own wars, because
we should also know
always
Turkey's
remind
role
people of the connection between Russia, Iran, and their support for the Assad regime.
Right. But we should also mention Turkey's role in this, because Turkey is a NATO country, and they are on all sides of this. But they are, remember that the Hamas leadership that has been politely asked to leave its quarters in Qatar has reportedly, and from what we understand, gone to Turkey. That's not new. I mean, it's new now, but Turkey has played host to Hamas in the past. Before Qatar, also they're sort of a regular one. Turkey was behind the flotilla, the Mavi Marmara incident. That was what, 2009, I think. But sending armed men on a so-called humanitarian flotilla into Gaza, I mean, to confront the Israeli Navy. It's been going on, so we're talking about a decade and a half of Turkey really willing to confront Israel. And now you look at what's going on in Syria, and Turkey is taking advantage of that, willing to ally with any bad actor in Syria, in the rebellion, as long as he can crush the Kurds, as long as Erdogan can crush the Kurds. And so we've got a NATO country, just, we call this, the Yiddish word is kochleffel, right? It's a pot stirrer. Erdogan is just going around the region setting fires. And this is a pretty big fire to be going on in Syria. And I think that's also a crisis for the alliance. NATO has to figure out, what do we do here in a situation like this, where a NATO ally is constantly stirring the pot of revolution in the Middle East.
And this, I just have to say, it's all very dispiriting to me, because it brings me back to like the 2010s, and this thing when you have jihadists fighting Islamist-backed dictators, and you don't want anyone to win.
No. And again, it's all Obama's fault.
Yes.
In 2011, Obama did not.
Thanks, Obama.
Did not support the Free Syrian Army. With the initial revolution against Assad was not Al Qaeda, and Obama did not support them, and the civil war just kind of metastasized. And then the second thing Obama did was remove our troops from Iraq at the end of 2011, thus opening the gateway to ISIS. And we've been living through the consequences of Obama's awful, terrible, no good, very bad presidency.
That's right.
For
Obama introducing Russia into the Syrian,
welcoming Syria in order to remember, because Russia was going to make sure that Assad's chemical weapons were disposed of. Thank you, John Kerry.
And the reset, even before the reset was the big thing. She had the button that said overcharge in Russian instead of reset, because they had, whoever was at the State Department had spelled it wrong, and Hillary was happily holding a button that did not say reset.
Right. Well, it's good that while this is all happening, we have Joe Biden in office in Angola.
I want him to go into the wilderness in Angola just like he did in Brazil.
Wander off.
My hope was that he would be wandering. The pardon, I think, would be a lot more dramatic if he had issued it from the Amazon. Day 30 however long ago, day 20 in the Amazon. I, Joe Biden, hereby pardon my son Hunter of all crimes he he did or may have committed. We really don't know what lies beneath the surface there. I'm going to make a recommendation, if I may be so bold here today. Now, commentary podcast rules. I have to make my recommendation, then one of you have to comment and either approve or disapprove.
We have to pounce on your recommendation.
Yes. So just I'll make it.
Yes, and
you can chime in. Yes. Okay. My recommendation today is a new memoir by the filmmaker Barry Sonnenfeld. It's called Best Possible Place, Worst Possible Time, True Stories from a Career in Hollywood. Barry Sonnenfeld is the director of the two Addams Family movies. He's the director of the Men in Black trilogy. He's the director of one of my favorite all-time movies, Get Shorty. Before he was a film director, he was a cinematographer, responsible for the lighting and camera work on such pictures as Big, When Harry Met Sally, Miller's Crossing, and Blood Simple, two great Coen brothers films. But in addition to his great work in film, Sonnenfeld is a really great writer. And a couple years ago, he came out with his first memoir, Barry Sonnenfeld, Call Your Mother, which was pretty hilarious, but also a window into how crazy his upbringing was. This new book, Best Possible Place, Worst Possible Time, is just more of a kind of collection of stories from his career in Hollywood. The chapters are very short, tells little snippets, tales of his interactions with producers and studio executives who he names. I mean, it's pretty bold. He kind of takes no prisoners here. They are hilarious. It's very entertaining. If you're interested in movies, if you've liked any of Barry Sonnenfeld's movies, or even if you just like funny writing, because there are some pretty just plain laugh out loud moments and lines that he uses, I'd recommend this new book by Barry Sonnenfeld.
Okay, yeah, I will now comment.
Thank you.
I'm on the fence about this. Is there any scandal or sleaze?
There is no. There is kind of intimated scandal. So it is interesting. He does tell about the filming of Men in Black 3, I think it was, where they were filming in New York. For whatever reason, Sony decided that the entire movie needed to be filmed in New York. And Sonnenfeld doesn't like that. He likes filming in studios on stages in Hollywood. But also Will Smith didn't like it because he lives in Los Angeles. And so apparently Will Smith had to fly back to LA every weekend to be with Jada. And Sonnenfeld says, I'm not sure what was going on at that time. So that's kind of implied that there's something there. And the other scandal that's not implied, or at least kind of now recognized, is Sonnenfeld directed a movie called 9 Lives, which I have not seen and I don't plan to see, because the premise of the movie was that Kevin Spacey is kind of an ornery businessman who was turned into a cat. That's the premise. This is a point in Sonnenfeld's career where he was really looking for work. This is more recent times. He's actually made a transition to TV. He now does the show Schmigadoon on Apple TV Plus, which is like a parody of musicals. And but in any case, when toward the end of his film career, he was really looking for work. He did this film 9 Lives, but the cat was played by Kevin Spacey. And he says in the book that Kevin Spacey was terrible, awful to work with, just a mean man. But as soon as the actor Robbie Amell, who is a Canadian heartthrob, showed up on stage, Spacey, who had been bad-mouthing this actor for weeks without seeing him, completely changed his tune and was very, very, very nice. So that was, again, there's kind of an implied scandal. So there's stuff like that.
Okay, I'm in.
So Spacey was the voice of the cat, and it was not like Cats, where he was.
No, well, he's a human. It's like
we didn't have to see Kevin Spacey in body paint, is what you're saying.
No, I've seen the movie.
Thanks,
I don't
Steph.
think we
now
had
I
that.
won't sleep tonight.
But no, it's like the Shaggy Dog, except with the cat, which I'm sure is how they pitched it.
Boy.
And it doesn't work out.
Okay, so and what's the name of the book again?
It's Best Possible Place, Worst Possible Time, True Stories from a Career in Hollywood by Barry Sonnenfeld. A very enjoyable read that I had over the weekend.
Terrific. So that's our recommends. That's our show. without John. He's on the mend.
He's
Sure, everyone listening, watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe. Wants him back urgently. I know we do. He will be. But for today, this is what you got. For Christine, Seth, and Matt, and the absent John, I'm Abe saying, keep the candle burning.